Intro. Hey everyone, glad to see you again. Let's get started. Imagine a room full of people talking at once. Laughter overlaps with opinions. Confidence fills the air. But in the corner, someone sits quietly, listening, not because they have nothing to say, but because they are gathering something more powerful than noise. Understanding in a world that celebrates loud voices, fast opinions, and constant performance. Silence is often mistaken for weakness, yet history tells a different story. Some of the most influential ideas were born in quiet rooms. Some of the strongest leaders spoke softly. Some of the deepest changes began inside people who preferred reflection over recognition. This is the story of those people. This is the power of quiet. We live in a culture that rewards those who speak first, talk the most, and think out loud. From classrooms to boardrooms, we are taught that confidence looks like volume and leadership sounds like certainty. Group work is praised. Open offices are everywhere. Brainstorming sessions demand instant answers. In T's world, being quiet can feel like being invisible. Many introverts grow up believing something is wrong with them. They are told to speak up more, network harder, be louder, sell themselves better. Slowly, subtly, they learn to hide their natural way of being. Quiet is not a book about becoming louder. It is about remembering who you already are. Susan Cain does not offer tricks to turn introverts into extroverts. Instead, she invites us to question the assumption that loud is better. She shows that introversion is not a flaw to fix, but a strength to understand. This book is a journey into temperament, identity, creativity, leadership, and courage. It asks a simple but radical question. What if the world needs quiet people just as much as loud ones? And what if your deepest power lives not in changing yourself, but in accepting how you naturally operate? Quiet is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about engaging with it in a way that is authentic, sustainable, and deeply impactful. Enjoyed the video? Subscribe to our channel. Hit a like, share it with friends, and leave a comment. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for all updates. Chapter 1. The Extrovert Ideal. The extrovert ideal is a quiet rule that shapes modern life. It is rarely spoken aloud, yet it influences how we educate children, how we choose leaders, how we define confidence, and how we measure success. According to this ideal, the best person is outgoing, expressive, energetic, and comfortable in the spotlight. Strength is associated with speaking up. Leadership is associated with presence. Intelligence is associated with quick answers. In T's world, silence is often misunderstood, and reflection is mistaken for hesitation. This belief did not always dominate society. For much of human history, people admired restraint, seriousness, and inner discipline. Character mattered more than personality. People were respected for what they stood for, not for how loudly they spoke. But as economies shifted and cities grew, a new set of values emerged. Business replaced craftsmanship. Salesmanship became essential. Success began to depend on persuasion, charm, and visibility. Slowly, the culture began to reward those who could perform confidence in public. The ideal human being transformed from thoughtful and reserved to bold and expressive. Schools became the first testing ground for this new value system. Children were encouraged to participate constantly, work in groups, and speak their thoughts immediately. The child who raised their hand often was praised. The child who listened quietly was overlooked. Classrooms became louder, more collaborative, more stimulating. For extroverted children, this felt natural. For introverted children, it felt draining. Many learned early that their natural way of being was less valued. They were told to speak up more, share more, be more visible. Over time, this subtle pressure taught them to doubt themselves. Workplaces continued this pattern. Open offices replaced private rooms. Brainstorming sessions demanded instant ideas. Meetings favored those who thought out loud. Promotions often went to those who sang. Yet research consistently shows that some of the best ideas emerge from solitude. Deep thinking requires quiet. Creativity often needs space. When everyone is forced into constant interaction, thoughtful voices disappear. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they need time to form meaning. Introversion is not shyness. It is not social anxiety. It is a preference for lower levels of stimulation. Introverts, recharged by being alone. They think deeply before speaking. They prefer meaningful conversations over small talk. Extroverts gain energy from interaction. They process ideas by talking. They thrive in dynamic environments. These differences are biological. Brain studies show that introverts and extroverts respond differently to dopamine and stimulation. One is not superior to the other. They are simply wired differently. The problem arises when one temperament is treated as the default. The extrovert ideal suggests that there is one correct way to be confident, one correct way to lead, one correct way to succeed. This belief creates unnecessary suffering. Introverts begin to perform extroversion even when it exhausts them. They attend constant meetings, forced enthusiasm, suppress their need for quiet. Over time, this leads to burnout and self-alienation. They stop trusting their instincts. They confuse exhaustion with inadequacy. Susan Cain shares stories of brilliant people who were overlooked because they were quiet. Employees whose ideas were ignored until repeated by louder colleagues. Students who were labeled disengaged despite deep understanding. Leaders who struggled early in their careers because they did not fit the expected mold. Yet many of these same individuals thrived once they were allowed to work in alignment with their nature. When given space to think, they produced extraordinary results. One of the most important ideas in this chapter is the concept of the sweet spot. Every person has an optimal level of stimulation where they perform best. Too little stimulation leads to boredom. Too much leads to anxiety and overwhelm. Introverts reach their sweet spot at lower levels of stimulation. Extroverts need more. When environments are designed only for extroverts, introverts are pushed beyond their optimal zone. Their performance suffers, not because they lack ability, but because the environment is misaligned. The extrovert ideal also affects leadership. We often assume that great leaders are charismatic, assertive, and dominant. Yet studies show that introverted leaders can be highly effective, especially when managing proactive teams. Introverted leaders tend to listen more, empower others, and think strategically. They are less likely to seek attention and more likely to focus on outcomes. Their leadership is quieter, but not weaker. It is deliberate. Cain challenges the assumption that confidence must be loud. True confidence is not about constant self-expression. It is about It is the ability to stand firmly in who you are without needing approval. Quiet confidence does not announce itself. It shows up in preparation, consistency, and integrity. It does not rush to speak. It waits until it has something meaningful to offer. The cultural obsession with group work and brainstorming is another expression of the extrovert ideal. While collaboration has value, it is not always the best path to insight. Research shows that individuals generate more original ideas when working alone. Groups are better at evaluating ideas than creating them. Yet many organizations prioritize collaboration at every stage, leaving little room for solitary thinking. The result is often shallow consensus rather than deep innovation. This chapter is not an argument against extroverts. Extroversion brings energy, connection, and momentum to the world. Society needs both temperaments. The problem is imbalance. When one style dominates, we lose the strengths of the other. We lose depth. Los nuans. We lose the quiet thinkers who notice what others miss. Cain invites readers to examine how the extrovert ideal has shaped their self. Have you ever felt pressure to speak when you had nothing to add? Have you mistaken calm for weakness? Have you believed that being quiet meant being less capable? These beliefs are learned, not true. When we question them, we begin to reclaim our natural strengths. The chapter ends with a powerful reframe. Instead of asking how to become louder, ask how to become more aligned. Instead of forcing yourself into environments that drain you, seek spaces that support your energy. Instead of measuring success by visibility, measure it by impact. The world does not need everyone to be louder. It needs people to be real. And for many, real is quiet. Chapter 2. The myth of group thinking. Modern culture celebrates collaboration as the highest form of intelligence. We are told that the best ideas are born in teams, that creativity sparks in noisy rooms, and that progress depends on constant interaction. From early education to corporate life, group work is presented as the gold standard. Classrooms are rearranged into clusters. Offices remove walls. Brainstorming becomes a ritual. The assumption is simple: more voices mean better ideas. Yet this belief, like many cultural assumptions, is only partially true. For many people, especially introverts, constant group thinking does not unlock creativity. It suppresses it. Susan Cain challenges the myth that creativity requires togetherness. She does not argue against collaboration itself, but against the unquestioned belief that it should replace solitude. True innovation, she explains, often begins in isolation. History supports this idea. Many transformative thinkers did their most important work alone. Writers, scientists, inventors, and philosophers often describe solitude as essential to their process. In quiet moments, ideas have room to develop. Distractions fade. Depth becomes possible. Group settings create a specific kind of pressure. In meetings and brainstorming sessions, people are expected to respond quickly. Silence is uncomfortable. The loudest voices dominate. Ideas are judged in real time, often before they are fully formed. For introverts, this environment is particularly challenging. They tend to think internally. They prefer to reflect before speaking. When forced to perform creativity on demand, their best ideas remain unspoken. This does not mean they lack ideas. It means the structure does not suit their cognitive style. Research supports this. Studies show that individuals generate more and better ideas when working alone than when brainstorming in groups. Groups are prone to conformity. People unconsciously align with dominant opinions. Novel ideas are often suppressed in favor of safe ones. Social dynamics matter more than originality. In contrast, solitude allows for risk. When alone, people are free to explore unconventional thoughts without fear of judgment. Cain introduces the concept of solo thinking, followed by group sharing. This approach respects both introversion and extroversion. Individuals first work alone, developing ideas independently. Then the group comes together to evaluate, refine, and implement those ideas. This method combines depth with collaboration. It allows quiet thinkers to contribute fully and gives extroverts the interaction they thrive on. Balance, not uniformity, leads to better outcomes. The open office is another symbol of the group thinking culture. Designed to increase communication and teamwork, open offices often do the opposite. Noise increases. Interruptions become constant. Focus disappears. Employees wear headphones to escape the very environment meant to connect them. For introverts, this is exhausting. For extroverts, it can also be distracting. Productivity suffers for everyone. Yet the model persists because it reflects cultural values rather than human needs. Schools reinforce the myth early. Group projects are praised. Individual work is minimized. Children who prefer working alone are encouraged to adapt. Over time, they learn that success requires constant interaction. This shapes their identity. They begin to equate quiet focus with social failure. Cain argues that education should honor different learning styles. Some children learn best through discussion, others through reflection. Both deserve equal respect. The myth of group thinking also affects leadership decisions. Committees are formed for every problem. Consensus is prioritized over clarity. Responsibility becomes diffused. In Manikas's strong leadership requires independent judgment. Leaders must sometimes step away from noise to think clearly. The ability to withdraw, reflect, and decide is a strength, not a weakness. Cain shares examples of organizations that embrace solitude as part of their culture. These companies provide private spaces, allow remote work, and respect uninterrupted time. The result is higher creativity, better morale, and stronger performance. When people are trusted to work in ways that suit them, they do their best work. The deeper message of this chapter is about permission. Permission to think alone. Permission to need quiet. permission to create without an audience. Many people carry guilt for preferring solitude, as if it signals antisocial behavior. Cain reframes solitude as a productive and healthy state. It is where insight forms and meaning deepens. This chapter invites readers to examine their relationship with group work. Do you feel energized or drained by constant collaboration? Do your best ideas come in conversation or in quiet moments? There is no correct answer, only so. When you understand how you think best, you can design your environment accordingly. The chapter closes with a gentle call to action. Create space for solitude in your life. Schedule time to think without interruption. Approach collaboration intentionally rather than automatically. Let ideas grow in silence before exposing them to noise. In a world that worships togetherness, choosing solitude can be a radical act. But it is often in that quiet space that the most original thoughts are born. Chapter 3. When collaboration kills creativity. Creativity is often portrayed as a social act. We imagine teams gathered around whiteboards, ideas flying across the room, energy building with every voice added to the mix. This image is powerful, but it is incomplete. While collaboration can refine ideas, it does not always create them. In Manikas's creativity requires the opposite environment, one of silence, focus, and inner exploration. Susan Cain argues that when collaboration is forced or excessive, it can quietly suffocate creativity, especially for those who think best alone. At the heart of creativity lies originality. Original ideas are fragile at birth. They need protection before they are exposed to evaluation. In group settings, ideas are often judged too early. The fear of sounding foolish or being misunderstood discourages risk-taking. People censor themselves. The safest ideas rise to the surface, while the most innovative remain hidden. This dynamic is subtle but powerful. It does not require open criticism. Even the presence of others can be enough to limit imagination. Introverts are particularly sensitive to this effect. They tend to process ideas internally and fully before sharing them. When required to speak before they are ready, they may offer incomplete thoughts or remain silent. Observers may interpret this as lack of creativity, when in reality it is a different creative rhythm. Cain emphasizes that creativity is not a performance. It is a process, and processes cannot be rushed without losing depth. The brain behaves differently in solitude. Without external stimulation, it enters a state of deep focus. Associations form. Memories connect. New insights emerge. This is the mental space where breakthroughs happen. Many artists, writers, and scientists describe their creative moments as solitary experiences. They withdraw from noise not to escape the world, but to understand it more clearly. Cain examines the culture of constant connectivity that defines modern life. Emails, messages, meetings, and notifications create a continuous stream of interruption. Even when people are technically alone, they are rarely undisturbed. This fragmented attention makes deep creative work difficult. Creativity requires sustained concentration. It requires time without interruption. Yet many workplaces treat uninterrupted time as a luxury rather than a necessity. The pressure to collaborate also affects self-perception. Quiet individuals may begin to doubt their creative ability because they do not shine in group settings. They may compare themselves to louder peers who appear more imaginative simply because they speak more often. Cain challenges this illusion. Creativity is not measured by frequency of expression. It is measured by quality of insight. A single well-developed idea can outweigh dozens of spontaneous ones. This chapter also explores the role of solitude when faced with complex problems. People often need time alone to think deeply. Group discussions can help clarify options, but they rarely replace individual reasoning. Cain shares research showing that independent thinkers are more likely to reach accurate conclusions, especially when dealing with uncertainty. Solitude allows people to question assumptions without social pressure. The modern emphasis on teamwork often ignores individual differences. Some people gain clarity through discussion. Otros, los italiano. When collaboration is treated as mandatory rather than optional, it becomes oppressive. True collaboration respects autonomy. It allows individuals to contribute in ways that align with their strengths. Cain advocates for flexible structures that combine independent work with thoughtful collaboration. Education systems play a key role in shaping creative confidence. When students are graded primarily on participation and group work, those who think quietly are disadvantaged. Over time, they may internalize the belief that creativity is something they lack. Cain argues for educational models that honor independent thinking. Students should be given opportunities to explore ideas alone before sharing them. This not only benefits introverts, but also leads to richer discussions overall. The chapter highlights the importance of psychological safety in creativity. People need to feel safe to explore unconventional ideas. Solitude provides a form of safety by removing social judgment. It allows people to experiment mentally without consequences. When ideas are fully formed, they can then be shared with confidence. Tisikansa solitude first. Collaboration second protects creativity rather than exposing it prematurely. Cain does not reject collaboration entirely. Collaboration should be intentional, not constant. It should serve the creative process, not dominate it. The most effective teams are those that value both independent thinking and collective refinement. They recognize that creativity begins inside individuals before it becomes a shared achievement. As the chapter draws to a close, Cain invites readers to rethink how they approach creativity in their own lives. Do you give yourself enough time alone to think deeply? Do you confuse silence with lack of ideas? Do you rush to share thoughts before they are ready? By honoring your natural creative rhythm, you allow your ideas to mature. The final message is quiet but firm. Creativity does not require an audience at every stage. Some of the most meaningful ideas are born in silence. When we protect space for solitude, we protect creativity itself. Chapter 4. Is temperament destiny? From early childhood, people notice differences in how they respond to the world. Some children rush toward new experiences, excited by novelty and noise. Others hesitate, observing carefully before engaging. These differences appear long before culture, education, or personal choice. Susan Cain introduces temperament as the biological foundation of personality, a deeply rooted aspect of who we are. The question is not whether temperament exists, but how much power it holds over our lives. Is temperament destiny, or is it simply a starting point? Research in psychology and neuroscience shows that temperament is largely inborn. Studies of infants reveal consistent patterns of sensitivity, reactivity, and emotional response. Some babies react strongly to stimulation, while others remain calm. These early traits often persist into adulthood. Introversion and extroversion are not habits that can be changed at will. They are patterns of energy and attention shaped by the nervous system. Understanding this truth can be liberating. It means that differences are not failures. They are variations. One of the key ideas Cain explores is sensitivity. Many introverts are more sensitive to stimuli, noise, light, social intensity. This sensitivity is not weakness. It allows for deep processing. Sensitive individuals notice subtleties others miss. They pick up emotional cues, patterns, and meaning. In supportive environments, this sensitivity becomes a strength. In overwhelming environments, it becomes a burden. The problem is not sensitivity itself, but environments that ignore it. Cain introduces the concept of the highly sensitive person, or H. These individuals process information deeply and feel emotions intensely. They are often empathetic, thoughtful, and creative. However, because society rewards boldness and speed, their traits are often misunderstood. They may be labeled as overthinking or overly emotional. Cain reframes these qualities as indicators of depth. Depth requires time and care. Temperament does influence behavior, but it does not imprison us. Cain emphasizes the idea of free trait theory. This theory suggests that while people have natural dispositions, they can temporarily act out of character when pursuing meaningful goals. An introvert can give a speech. A sensitive person can take risks. The key is that these behaviors are chosen, not forced. When people act against their temperament for something they care about, it is sustainable. When they do it constantly to meet external expectations, it becomes exhausting. Understanding temperament allows for self-compassion. Many introverts spend years criticizing themselves for needing solitude or feeling drained by social interaction. When they realize that their nervous system is simply wired differently, self-judgment softens. They stop trying to become someone else and start learning how to work with their nature. This shift is powerful. It replaces resistance with acceptance. Cain also explores the role of culture in shaping how temperament is expressed. In some cultures, quietness is respected. In others, it is discouraged. The same temperament can be celebrated or suppressed depending on social values. This reveals that destiny is not solely biological. Environment matters. When environments honor different temperaments, people thrive. When they do not, people struggle unnecessarily. The chapter examines how parents and educators influence the relationship between temperament and destiny. Children who are sensitive or introverted need understanding, not pressure. When adults respect their pace and provide gentle encouragement, these children develop confidence. When they are forced into overstimulating situations, they may withdraw further. Support does not mean avoidance. It means gradual exposure with respect for limits. Cain shares stories of individuals who learned to embrace their temperament later in life. Once they stopped fighting their nature, their energy returned. Their creativity deepened. Their relationships improved. Accepting temperament did not make them passive. It made them strategic. They chose challenges that aligned with their values and rested when needed. This chapter challenges the false choice between nature and growth. You are not stuck, and you are not infinitely malleable. You are adaptable within a framework. Temperament provides the framework. Growth happens when you stretch gently, not when you break yourself trying to fit someone else's mold. As the chapter concludes, Cain offers a reassuring perspective. Your temperament is not your enemy. It is your foundation. When you understand it, you can design a life that supports your energy, honors your sensitivity, and allows you to contribute fully. Destiny is not about changing who you are. It is about becoming more deeply yourself. Chapter 5. Envión Temperamen. Temperament explains much about who we are, but it does not explain everything. If personality were fixed and unchangeable, growth would be impossible. Susan Cain makes a crucial distinction in this chapter. Temperament sets the baseline, not the ceiling. Understanding your natural tendencies is not an excuse to avoid challenge. It is a tool for choosing challenges wisely. Growth happens when people move beyond comfort without betraying their core nature. Cain introduces the idea that personality is shaped by both biology and experience. While introverts and extroverts differ in how they respond to stimulation, life experiences influence confidence, skills, and behavior. A quiet child may grow into a capable public speaker. An outgoing child may learn the value of solitude. These changes do not erase temperament. They expand capability. The danger lies in assuming that comfort equals authenticity and discomfort equals enough. Sometimes discomfort is simply growth in progress. The chapter explores how fear is often confused with introversion. Many people avoid public speaking, leadership roles, or social situations not because they are introverted, but because they fear judgment. Cain emphasizes that fear can be addressed. Skills can be learned. Boundaries can be strengthened. The goal is not to become extroverted, but to become courageous within your own temperament. Cain revisits free trait theory and applies it to real life. People regularly act out of character when motivated by love, purpose, or responsibility. A quiet parent becomes assertive to protect a child. A reserved employee speaks up to defend an idea they believe in. These moments feel draining, but also meaningful. They are sustainable because they are rooted in values. Problems arise when people live in free traits constantly, without rest or recovery. Energy management becomes a central theme. Introverts can stretch into extroverted behaviors, but they need time alone to recharge. Ignoring this need leads to burnout. Cain encourages readers to pay attention to energy signals. Fatigue is not laziness. Irritability is not failure. These are signs that the nervous system needs rest. Respecting these signals allows people to stretch again later. The chapter also challenges the idea of personality tests as labels rather than guides. When people use labels to limit themselves, they shrink. Saying, "I'm just an introvert," can become a shield against growth. Cain warns against this mindset. Identity should be descriptive, not restrictive. Knowing your temperament should open doors, not close them. Cain shares examples of people who learn to balance, stretch, and restoration. A quiet leader schedules solitude after meetings. A sensitive artist sets boundaries around social obligations. A reflective teacher designs lessons that allow for quiet participation. These individuals do not deny their temperament. They design around it. Culture often rewards those who push constantly, but sustainable success requires rhythm. Cain highlights the importance of cycles: engagement, followed by withdrawal, action, followed by reflection. This rhythm is natural and healthy, especially for introverts. When respected, it leads to consistent performance rather than sporadic exhaustion. The chapter addresses the misconception that growth requires permanent change. Many people believe that to succeed, they must become someone else entirely. Cain rejects this idea. Growth is not replacement. It is integration. New skills are added to existing strengths. Confidence grows without erasing sensitivity. Assertiveness develops without destroying empathy. Cain invites readers to reflect on where they may be underestimating themselves. Are there challenges you have avoided because they felt unnatural? Are there roles you assumed were not for you? By separating temperament from fear, new possibilities emerge. You can choose growth that aligns with your values rather than societal expectations. As the chapter closes, Cain offers a grounded message. You are not confined by your temperament, nor should you ignore it. True freedom comes from understanding where you begin and choosing where to go next. Beyond temperament lies intentional growth, quiet, deliberate, and deeply personal. Chapter 6. Franklin was a politician, but Eleanor spoke out. History often remembers leaders as bold, commanding figures who dominate rooms and bend others to their will. Yet some of the most influential leaders led quietly, shaping outcomes through empathy and moral clarity rather than force. In this chapter, Susan Cain explores leadership through a different lens, using the example of Eleanor Roosevelt to show how quiet strength can change the world. Leadership, Cain argues, is not about volume. It is about impact. Eleanor Roosevelt was not naturally comfortable in the spotlight. She was shy, introspective, and deeply sensitive to criticism. Public speaking terrified her. Social gatherings drained her. By traditional standards, she did not fit the image of a political leader. Yet she became one of the most influential figures of her time. Her leadership emerged not from charisma, but from conscience. She listened to people others ignored. She spoke for those who had no voice. Her power came from moral authority rather than social dominance. Cain contrasts Eleanor Roosevelt's style with that of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Franklin was outgoing, charming, and confident in public. Eleanor was reflective and inward-focused. Together, they formed a balance. Franklin navigated politics. Eleanor connected with people. She traveled extensively, listened deeply, and reported what she learned. Her introversion allowed her to absorb reality rather than perform it. This made her insights invaluable. The chapter challenges the assumption that leadership requires constant assertiveness. Many introverted leaders lead by example rather than command. They earn trust through consistency. They inspire through integrity. They are comfortable stepping back and letting others shine. Research shows that such leaders are often highly effective, particularly in complex environments where listening and adaptability matter more than dominance. Cain explores the concept of quiet leadership in modern organizations. Introverted leaders tend to create space for others. They listen before deciding. They value preparation over improvisation. These traits foster psychological safety. Teams feel heard. Ideas flow more freely. In contrast, loud leadership can sometimes suppress dissent and limit creativity. This chapter also addresses the internal struggle introverted leaders face. Many doubt their legitimacy because they do not match cultural expectations. They may feel pressured to perform extroversion, adopting styles that feel unnatural. Cain argues that this pressure is unnecessary and harmful. Authentic leadership emerges when individuals lead from their strengths, not their insecurities. Cain shares stories of introverted leaders who transformed their organizations by embracing their natural style. Rather than mimicking extroverted behaviors, they focused on deep relationships, thoughtful decision-making, and clear values. Their success did not come from changing who they were, but from trusting who they were. The chapter emphasizes that speaking out does not require constant speaking. Eleanor Roosevelt chose her moments carefully. When she spoke, it mattered. She wrote, listened, and acted with purpose. Her influence grew because it was grounded in empathy and persistence. Quiet voices, Cain reminds us, often carry further because they are not wasted. Leadership is also about courage. Introverts are often mistaken as conflict-averse, but this is not always true. Many are willing to confront injustice when it aligns with their values. Eleanor Roosevelt's advocacy for human rights required immense bravery. She faced criticism and resistance, yet persisted. Her introversion did not prevent courage. It shaped Italiano. Cain invites readers to rethink their image of a leader. Instead of asking who commands attention, ask who creates change. Instead of rewarding confidence alone, reward character. Leadership is not a performance. It is a responsibility. As the chapter concludes, Cain offers a powerful reminder. You do not need to be loud to lead. You need clarity, compassion, and conviction. Like Eleanor Roosevelt, you can speak out in your own way. Quiet leadership does not shout. It resonates. Chapter 7. When they can't hear you, you can't change them. Silence is often mistaken for weakness, but there are moments when silence becomes a barrier. Susan Cain turns in this chapter to a difficult truth. While quiet strength is powerful, change requires expression. Ideas, values, and truths must eventually be shared. If people cannot hear you literally or metaphorically, your influence remains limited. The challenge for introverts is not becoming louder than others, but learning how to make their voices heard without betraying who they are. Many introverts grow up receiving the message that speaking up is dangerous. They are cautious by nature. They observe before acting. They choose words carefully. When placed in environments that reward fast talkers, they may retreat further, reinforcing the belief that their voice does not matter. Cain argues that this belief is learned, not inherent. The capacity to speak exists within everyone. What differs is the method and timing. Cain introduces the concept of quiet advocacy. This is not about dominating conversations or forcing opinions. It is about clarity, preparation, and intentional expression. Introverts often excel when they prepare in advance. They think deeply, organize thoughts, and communicate with precision. When they speak from preparation rather than impulse, their words carry weight. The chapter explores why speaking matters. Change requires friction. New ideas challenge existing beliefs. If those ideas remain unspoken, the status quo remains untouched. Cain emphasizes that influence is not about frequency of speech, but effectiveness. A single well-timed statement can shift a conversation. A carefully written message can reach further than spontaneous talk. Fear plays a central role in silence. Fear of conflict, fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood. Cain distinguishes between constructive silence and protective silence. Constructive silence allows for reflection. Protective silence avoids risk. Growth begins when people recognize the difference. When values are at stake, silence can become a form of self-betrayal. Cain shares examples of introverts who learned to advocate for themselves and others. Some used writing as their primary voice. Others chose one-on-one conversations over public debate. Some spoke in meetings, only after preparing notes. These strategies honored their temperament while expanding their influence. The goal was not to mimic extroverts, but to find authentic channels of expression. The chapter also addresses the role of listening and being heard. Introverts are often excellent listeners. This skill builds trust. When people feel heard, they are more open to influence. Quiet advocates leverage this advantage. They listen first, understand perspectives, and then respond thoughtfully. Their words land because they are relevant, not reactive. Cain discusses the importance of choosing battles. Speaking up does not mean speaking about everything. It means identifying what matters most. When introverts focus their energy on issues aligned with their values, their voice becomes stronger. They are less drained because the expression is meaningful. Workplace dynamics are a key focus. Meetings often reward speed over substance. Cain suggests practical strategies, asking for agendas in advance, following up in writing, requesting time to think before deciding. These small adjustments level the playing field. They allow quiet thinkers to contribute fully without unnecessary strain. The chapter also challenges the belief that influence must be immediate. Introverts often create change slowly. They build credibility over time. Their consistency speaks for them. Influence accumulates through trust rather than theatrics. This kind of influence is durable. As the chapter closes, Cain offers a firm but compassionate reminder. Quiet does not mean invisible. Your ideas deserve expression. Your values deserve a voice. You do not need to shout to be heard. You need intention, courage, and a method that honors who you are. When people can hear you, change becomes possible. Chapter 8. The innovation gap. Innovation is often romanticized as the product of dynamic teams, constant brainstorming, and fearless extroverted leaders. Popular culture celebrates those who dominate the room, speak first, and persuade quickly. Susan Cain challenges this assumption, arguing that such an image ignores a hidden engine of creativity, the quiet, reflective mind. She introduces the concept of the innovation gap, the missed potential that occurs when workplaces, schools, and societies undervalue introverted contributions. The innovation gap emerges because environments are structured around extroverted norms. Open offices, collaborative projects, and rapid response expectations favor those who thrive on stimulation. Introverts, who process internally and need time to reflect, often struggle to participate fully. Their ideas may be brilliant, but if they are not shared in the right format or at the right time, they remain invisible. Society loses those insights. Teams lose solutions. Creativity suffers. Cain illustrates this with examples from corporate settings. At a technology company, teams were encouraged to brainstorm continuously in group sessions. While the energy was high, the quality of ideas plateaued. Quiet engineers who had spent hours thinking alone generated solutions that could have transformed projects, yet their contributions were sidelined because they did not perform well in loud, fast-paced meetings. When leadership later allowed for individual preparation before group discussion, innovation surged. The chapter examines the neuroscience behind these differences. Introverts are more sensitive to stimulation, meaning their brains can become overloaded by high-intensity social interactions. While extroverts thrive on dopamine and external energy, introverts experience stress when This is not a limitation. It is simply a different wiring. When their environment ignores these differences, it creates the innovation gap. When their environment accommodates them, potential. Cain also explores the psychology of confidence. Introverts often underestimate the value of their contributions. If they must compete for attention in a group dominated by extroverts, self-doubt grows. Over time, this leads to disengagement. Talented individuals stop sharing ideas. Brilliant solutions never surface. The innovation gap is not just structural. It is psychological. Schools contribute to the problem as well. Standardized testing and group participation reward quick responses rather than deep thinking. Students who excel in reflection, analysis, and solitary problem-solving are undervalued. They may become disengaged or doubt their abilities. Cain emphasizes that creativity is a process, not a performance. Quick, loud contributions are not inherently more valuable than slow, deliberate ones. The chapter also discusses strategies to close the gap. Cain highlights companies and teams that structure work around both personality types. Individuals are encouraged to prepare ideas independently, then bring them to group discussion. Meetings are redesigned to allow reflection before input. Written contributions are valued alongside spoken ones. These approaches not only increase participation but also improve quality. Cain introduces the concept of capitalizing on temperament in innovation. Rather than forcing introverts to act like extroverts, environments can be redesigned to leverage their strengths. Quiet thinkers excel at careful analysis, long-term planning, and noticing overlooked patterns. Extroverts excel at energizing teams, networking, and rapid problems. The combination is powerful, but only if both contributions are recognized. The innovation gap also exists outside the workplace. Social movements, community projects, and academic research often undervalue quiet leadership. People who listen, observe, and develop ideas carefully may be overlooked in favor of those who speak forcefully. Cain stresses that recognizing this gap is the first step in addressing it. Society must value depth as much as dynamism. The chapter examines famous innovators who were introverted, scientists like Einstein and Curie, writers like J.K. Rowling, and entrepreneurs like Bill Gates relied heavily on reflection and solitude. Their contributions were transformative, yet they often worked alone for extended periods before sharing their insights. Their quiet persistence illustrates the immense potential of untapped introverted talent. Cain concludes by emphasizing responsibility. Individuals can learn to advocate for themselves and their ideas, but organizations and societies also have a duty to recognize different working styles. Closing the innovation gap requires structural change, cultural understanding, and respect for diversity of temperament. When the quiet are empowered, innovation is no longer a dream, it becomes a measurable reality. The chapter closes with a clear call to action. Pay attention to the voices you may be overlooking. Create environments where reflection is possible. Encourage preparation before discussion. Value thoughtful contributions as much as rapid ones. In doing so, we do not just close a gap, we unlock potential that was always there, waiting quietly to be expressed. Chapter 9. Deep work, not busy work. In a world that prizes visible activity, movement, and constant responsiveness, depth often goes unnoticed. Meetings, emails, social media, and open offices reward those who appear busy. Susan Cain argues that real accomplishment, innovation, insight, creativity emerges not from constant action, but from deep work. This chapter explores how introverts naturally excel at sustained attention, reflection, and deliberate thinking, and why society often misunderstands these strengths. Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. It contrasts sharply with shallow work tasks that are reactive, fragmented, and externally validated. Cain observes that introverts, by temperament, often prefer environments conducive to deep work. Solitude, quiet, and minimal stimulation allow them to concentrate fully. Yet modern culture frequently penalizes this preference, confusing quiet reflection with slowness, introversion with disengagement. Cain draws attention to the concept of attention capital. The ability to sustain attention is increasingly rare and valuable in a distracted world. Those who cultivate deep work produce ideas, solutions, and creations that others cannot match. Introverts, when given the space to focus, consistently generate high-quality outcomes. They think through possibilities thoroughly, anticipate problems, and synthesize information in ways that fast-paced collaboration rarely allows. The chapter explores the neuroscience behind attention. Sustained focus allows the brain to form new connections, integrate knowledge, and develop insights that superficial engagement cannot produce. Dopamine pathways, neuroplasticity, and memory consolidation all function more effectively when stimulation is controlled. For introverts, low-stimulation environments are optimal. They can concentrate for longer periods, producing richer, more original work than in high-energy, noisy settings. Cain critiques the modern workplace, which often prioritizes visibility over results. Open-plan offices, constant meetings, and rapid response expectations fragment attention. Many introverts are forced into environments that prevent deep work, leading to exhaustion and underperformance. Their talent is not absent. It is misaligned with context. Cain emphasizes that designing work around energy patterns, temperament, and focus is essential for maximizing productivity. Education systems reinforce the bias toward constant output. Students are rewarded for participation, speed, and immediate responses rather than reflective thought. Slow, deliberate work is undervalued. Introverted students may excel in solitary assignments, but are pressured to perform in group settings to demonstrate value. This can erode confidence, teach the wrong lesson about success, and discourage the very thinking styles that produce innovation. Cain introduces practical strategies for cultivating deep work. First, identify periods of natural focus and protect them from interruption. Second, structure work around energy cycles rather than social expectations. Third, use solitude strategically, not as isolation, but as an investment in thinking. Fourth, balance deep work with necessary collaboration, ensuring that both reflection and engagement coexist. These strategies allow introverts to contribute fully without abandoning their nature. The chapter also explores creativity in professional contexts. Introverts often produce superior solutions not by talking more, but by thinking more. They analyze risks, explore alternatives, and notice subtle connections. In contrast, environments that reward rapid responses often generate superficial solutions. Cain argues that balancing speed and reflection is critical for meaningful achievement. Listening is another component of deep work. Introverts naturally observe patterns, hear nuances, and detect inconsistencies that others overlook. This skill enhances problem-solving, decision-making, and innovation. By combining observation with reflection, introverts develop insight that is often invisible to those who rely on extroverted strategies alone. Cain emphasizes that cultivating deep work is not about withdrawal from society. It is about intentional engagement. Introverts can participate fully in collaboration, leadership, and social interaction, but they must also protect space for reflection. When both dimensions are respected, performance, creativity, and satisfaction increase dramatically. The chapter closes with a philosophical reflection. Modern culture confuses busyness with productivity. Real impact is quieter. It grows in concentration, reflection, and care. Deep work may not be visible in open-plan offices or daily reports, but its effects ripple outward, transforming organizations, communities, and lives. Cain urges readers to recognize their capacity for depth, protect it fiercely, and resist cultural pressures to measure worth by noise. As the chapter concludes, the call is clear. Prioritize thinking, reflection, and intentional action over constant motion. Value your ability to focus deeply, and do not apologize for it. In a noisy world, the quiet who think profoundly are often the ones who change it. Chapter 10. The Power of Solitude. Solitude is often misunderstood. Society equates being alone with loneliness, weakness, or social failure. Susan Cain challenges this misconception, arguing that solitude is not only natural, but essential for personal growth, creativity, and emotional resilience. It is in solitude that people reflect deeply, process experiences, and develop a sense of self-independent of external pressures. For introverts, solitude is a source of energy. For everyone, it can be a catalyst for clarity and innovation. Cain begins by distinguishing solitude from isolation. Solitude is intentional and restorative. Isolation is enforced and alienating. Many introverts instinctively seek solitude to recharge, but culture often stigmatizes this need. The quiet hours of reflection are dismissed as laziness or social inadequacy. Yet history shows that great scientists, writers, philosophers, and leaders used solitude to develop insight. Einstein, for instance, spent countless hours thinking alone, forming revolutionary ideas in physics that could not have emerged from constant social interaction. The chapter emphasizes the link between solitude and creativity. When the mind is free from distraction, it begins to notice patterns, form connections, and generate original ideas. Introverts, sensitive to overstimulation, excel in these conditions. They can observe nuances, consider possibilities, and explore alternatives without interruption. Cain notes that modern culture, with its open offices, constant notifications, and pressure to network, often deprives individuals of the mental space necessary for this kind of thinking. When solitude is respected, the quality and originality of work increase dramatically. Cain also explores solitude as a tool for emotional well-being. Reflection allows individuals to process experiences, manage stress, and align actions with values. Without these quiet periods, people risk reacting impulsively, overcommitting socially, or losing touch with their inner guidance. Introverts naturally benefit from this process, but anyone can cultivate it intentionally. Journaling, walking alone, or simply setting aside uninterrupted time are practices that foster self-awareness and emotional clarity. The chapter examines the societal discomfort with solitude. Many cultures emphasize constant activity and social engagement, equating visibility with value. This creates pressure, especially on introverts, to conform to extroverted norms. Cain argues that this pressure is unnecessary and counterproductive. Solitude does not mean disengagement. It means preparation. Quiet reflection produces sharper decisions, more effective leadership, and deeper relationships. Cain introduces strategies to cultivate productive solitude. First, schedule intentional alone time daily, even if brief. Second, use solitude to explore personal goals, values, and creative ideas. Third, separate solitude from social avoidance. Use it to recharge, not escape. Fourth, create environments that minimize distractions. Turn off notifications, find private spaces, and set boundaries with others. By protecting solitude, individuals harness their most valuable cognitive and emotional resources. The chapter also explores solitude and relationships. Introverts often experience tension because partners, colleagues, or friends may not understand their need for space. Cain stresses that solitude strengthens, rather than weakens, social connections. People who take time to reflect and recharge engage more fully and meaningfully when they interact. Depth, empathy, and clarity increase with intentional alone time, enhancing the quality of relationships rather than diminishing them. Cain illustrates the concept with examples of creative and influential figures. Writers like J.K. Rowling and thinkers like Bill Gates carved out solitude deliberately, using it to generate ideas and solve complex problems. Their periods of withdrawal were not passive. They were intensely productive. These examples demonstrate that solitude is not a luxury but a strategic tool for achievement. The chapter concludes with a cultural critique and personal invitation. Modern society often pressures people to be constantly on, equating engagement with value. Cain challenges readers to redefine success. It is not measured by visibility, noise, or constant networking, but by depth, reflection, and meaningful output. Solitude is not a retreat from the world. It is preparation to engage with it fully and effectively. Cain's final message is both empowering and practical. Embrace solitude as a source of strength. Protect time for reflection. Honor your natural rhythms. Use quiet not only to recharge, but to think deeply, act intentionally, and live authentically. In a world that confuses busyness with productivity, those who cultivate solitude often create the most lasting impact, not by being louder, but by being fully present with their own ideas, values, and purpose. Chapter 11. The Quiet Revolution. Throughout history, quiet voices have often been underestimated. Society tends to equate influence with volume, leadership with charisma, and power with presence. Yet some of the most transformative changes have been driven by introspective, reflective, and seemingly reserved individuals. Susan Cain calls this phenomenon the quiet revolution. It is the subtle, patient reshaping of the world by those who do not need to dominate the spotlight to effect lasting change. The chapter begins with a reflection on cultural biases. From childhood, people are taught that being seen and heard equates to success. Schools reward participation over reflection, workplaces favor self-promotion over careful analysis, and media celebrates extroverted personalities. This has led to a widespread undervaluation of introverts' contributions, yet the quiet often wield influence in ways that are deeper, more enduring, and sometimes invisible to casual observers. The quiet revolution is not loud, but it is powerful. Cain examines the mechanics of this influence. Quiet individuals often excel at deep listening, careful observation, and strategic thinking. These skills allow them to notice opportunities and problems that others miss. They think before acting, reflecting on consequences and weighing alternatives. While extroverts may drive rapid action, introverts frequently generate solutions that are more sustainable and impactful. In essence, quiet influence operates through preparation, insight, and integrity. The chapter highlights historical examples of quiet change. Scientists who revolutionized their fields often worked alone for years, developing theories that transformed understanding. Social reformers advocated for marginalized groups through deliberate, consistent effort rather than dramatic gestures. Writers, thinkers, and innovators created ripples of change that grew into waves over time. Their quiet persistence demonstrates that influence is not measured by immediate visibility, but by lasting effect. Cain emphasizes that introverts contribute to cultural and organizational transformation in ways that are often unrecognized. They mentor behind the scenes, guide teams through observation rather than command, and create systems that amplify effectiveness. Their influence is indirect, yet pervasive, subtle but consequential. In workplaces, introverts often elevate others' strengths, improve processes, and ensure that ideas are implemented thoughtfully. This kind of leadership, while quiet, builds resilience and long-term success. The chapter also explores the personal dimension of participating in the quiet revolution. Many introverts struggle with self-doubt, fearing their voice is insufficient or their presence too subtle. Cain reassures readers that effectiveness is not proportional to decibels. The measure of influence lies in alignment with values, consistency of action, and clarity of thought. When quiet individuals recognize the power of their approach, they can operate with confidence rather than hesitation. Cain addresses the strategic use of solitude in amplifying influence. Quiet revolutionaries invest time in preparation, reflection, and analysis. They seek depth over breadth and substance over spectacle. This allows them to engage effectively when the moment calls for it. Their interventions, carefully considered, often carry more weight than constant participation. The chapter stresses that influence is most effective when it is intentional rather than performative. Practical strategies for cultivating quiet influence are outlined. First, observe before acting. Notice patterns, understand dynamics, and identify leverage points. Second, prepare thoroughly, develop insights, and plan communication thoughtfully. Third, choose moments strategically. Speak when it will matter most. Fourth, leverage written communication and one-on-one discussions to supplement group interactions. These approaches allow introverts to extend their reach without compromising their nature. Cain also discusses the role of empathy in quiet influence. Introverts are often highly attuned to others' emotions, needs, and perspectives. This sensitivity allows them to navigate complex social dynamics with subtlety and grace. They can build trust, resolve conflict, and foster collaboration without asserting dominance. Empathy, coupled with reflection, makes quiet influence particularly resilient and enduring. The chapter contrasts quiet influence with the extrovert ideal of visibility. Extroverted leaders often achieve quick results through assertiveness and charisma, but their impact may be ephemeral. Quiet revolutionaries may take longer to be recognized, yet their contributions often shape systems, ideas, and cultures in lasting ways. Cain emphasizes that the world needs both approaches, but the quiet revolution is essential because it provides depths, sustainability, and integrity. Cain explores the psychological rewards of embracing the quiet revolution. Introverts who recognize their power feel validation and alignment with their natural tendencies. They experience less exhaustion, fewer conflicts between identity and expectation, and more satisfaction from their work. By acting within their strengths, they can influence without stress, innovate without burnout, and lead without performing a persona. The chapter concludes with a cultural call to action. Society should recognize and cultivate quiet influence rather than suppress it. Organizations, schools, and communities can redesign structures to respect reflection, reward preparation, and value thoughtful contributions. When quiet voices are heard, innovation deepens, collaboration improves, and decisions become wiser. Cain urges readers to see the quiet revolution not as a private refuge, but as a collective movement capable of profound change. The final message is both empowering and urgent. Change does not require loudness, domination, or spectacle. True transformation often comes from quiet persistence, deliberate action, and deep thinking. Introverts are not passive observers of history, they are its architects. By embracing their strengths, honoring their rhythms, and exercising intentional influence, they participate in a revolution that reshapes the world one thoughtful act at a time. Chapter 12. Embracing Your Quiet Power. The journey through introversion, solitude, and quiet influence culminates in this final chapter. Susan Cain emphasizes that understanding one's temperament, leveraging one's strengths, and protecting reflective space is not a luxury. It is essential for personal fulfillment, creativity, and lasting impact. The central message is clear. Quiet does not mean weak, invisible, or ineffective. On the contrary, it is a source of extraordinary power when recognized, cultivated, and embraced. Cain opens by revisiting the cultural narratives that undervalue quietness. From early childhood, many people are taught to equate success with visibility, assertiveness, and extroversion. Participation, volume, and rapid responsiveness are praised over depth, reflection, and thoughtfulness. Quiet individuals internalize these messages, often judging themselves harshly for needing time alone or for preferring careful thought over rapid expression. Cain reframes this story. Quietness is not a limitation. It is a different pathway to influence, creativity, and leadership. The chapter explores practical ways to embrace quiet power in daily life. Cain emphasizes the importance of understanding your natural rhythms when you are most focused, energized, and creative is the first step toward harnessing your strengths. Introverts who schedule work and reflection in alignment with their energy levels produce higher quality output and avoid burnout. Solitude, intentional thinking, and strategic engagement become tools rather than burdens. Cain addresses social perception and interaction. Many introverts fear being overlooked or misunderstood in social or professional settings. The solution is not to mimic extroverts, but to develop methods of communication that are authentic yet effective. This may involve preparing for meetings in advance, using written communication to supplement spoken contributions, and practicing concise, deliberate speech. When quiet voices are deliberate, they often carry more weight than rapid, reactive ones. Leadership is revisited as a space where quiet power shines. Cain emphasizes that effective leadership is less about dominating rooms and more about influencing outcomes, building trust, and guiding thoughtfully. Introverted leaders often excel in these areas precisely because they listen, reflect, and act strategically. Empathy, observation, and preparation allow them to inspire others and make thoughtful decisions without relying on charisma or visibility. The quiet leader's power is steady, sustainable, and deeply respected. Creativity is another domain where quiet power is essential. Cain highlights that many innovative breakthroughs result from sustained reflection rather than group performance. Solitude allows ideas to incubate, deep connections to form, and risks to be evaluated thoughtfully. The quiet mind notices subtleties, sees patterns, and generates insights that can be transformative. By embracing solitude as a productive tool, introverts turn potential into impact. The chapter also explores relationships and social engagement. Cain challenges the misconception that introverts are socially distant or uninterested in connection. Quiet individuals often form deep, meaningful relationships because they listen carefully, empathize, and prioritize depth over breadth. Embracing quiet power means valuing authentic connection, setting boundaries to preserve energy, and choosing engagements that align with values rather than obligation. Cain emphasizes the importance of self-compassion. Many introverts struggle with guilt over needing rest, silence, or solitude. They compare themselves to extroverted norms and conclude they are deficient. This mindset is both inaccurate and harmful. Recognizing that your temperament is a strength allows for confidence, energy, and resilience. Quiet power is cultivated, not imposed. It grows through acceptance, reflection, and intentional action. The chapter examines how to balance quiet power with societal demands. Modern life often pressures constant engagement, rapid response, and visible output. Cain encourages readers to design systems that allow both reflection and participation. This may involve structuring meetings to allow for preparation, carving out dedicated time for deep work and communicating strategically. By doing so, introverts preserve their energy while still contributing effectively. Cain revisits the stories of influential quiet individuals, demonstrating the universality of quiet power. Innovators, writers, leaders, and activists have reshaped fields, societies, and ideas without dominating attention. Their influence stems from preparation, insight, empathy, and persistence. These examples reinforce the idea that quiet power is not pacified, is intentional, disciplined, and enduring. The chapter concludes with a call to action. Cain urges readers to embrace their own temperament fully, honor their need for reflection and solitude, and develop strategies to communicate effectively without sacrificing authenticity. Quiet power is not about mimicking extroverts. It is about maximizing the impact of your natural strengths. By understanding yourself, respecting your rhythms, and acting with intent, you can achieve meaningful influence, foster creativity, and lead a fulfilled, authentic life. Finally, Cain frames quiet power as a societal gift. When introverts embrace their strengths, they enrich organizations, communities, and relationships. They bring depth, innovation, empathy, and insight. The world often measures influence by volume, but lasting change is created through thoughtful action, reflection, and integrity. Embracing quiet power is not merely self-serving, it contributes to a more balanced, thoughtful, and effective society. The chapter and the book ends with a reminder. Being quiet is not a weakness. It is a source of extraordinary potential. By honoring your temperament, protecting your reflective space, and engaging intentionally with the world, you join the quiet revolution. You make a difference, not by shouting, but by thinking deeply, acting deliberately, and influencing meaningfully. In a world full of noise, the quiet who embrace their power often leave the largest footprints.